Hi, so here's Daniel with another tutorial. This time I want to go through something new that I'm working a lot with, which is QuantConnect, and make a tutorial about how you can export external data, in this case from iKnowFirst, which is a great forecasting service, and import it into your QuantConnect algorithm by using a shared Dropbox file. And eventually creating an algorithm which you can trade with. And hopefully by the time that we do go through the tutorial, you could design code which you can then change and build your own strategy around it. So I'll try and keep it as simple as I can. So let's start. So first of all, you will need some sort of subscription to iKnowFirst or another external data source. And of course, you will also need to have a QuantConnect account. And we can start here by creating a new project. We will use C#. Now QuantConnect will give you some basic algorithm here, which is basically our working template. So you can follow step by step and we will make our own algorithm. So the first thing to do would be to change our algorithm name, and we will call our algorithm Swing Trader Pro, which is a part of the QuantConnect algorithm class. Now, before we initialize the algorithm, we want to create some variables, which are the variables which we will use throughout our algorithm. So the first one would be a private instance of signal, and signal will later be our class in which we import all signal data from an external data source. So we'll start by creating an instance of that. Next we want to choose the asset that we're going to trade, and in this case, because we're importing CL1, which is NYMEX futures or oil futures, we need to find an ETF that is actually part of the QuantConnect universe, and in this case we will use USO, which follows quite closely in price. So we will just initialize it here and set it to USO. Now because we set it up as a variable, we can later actually adjust it to anything that we want. So you can just change the string here and the entire algorithm will run on a different input. Next we are going to set our leverage variable, which will be 2 in this case, which just gives us a little bit more playing room. Doesn't mean we will use it. And then we also want to create 2 simple moving averages, and this is because we are going to later use them as a rule for trading. So we were going to use a 1-day moving average and a 5-day moving average. Let's call the 5-day moving average SMA, and we're going to make a 1-day moving average, which we can call SMA now, which is also basically the last closing price of the stock which you're trading. So here we can initialize our algorithm. In the initialize class, you first define the time you're testing. Now, because our data set is starting on a specific date and ending on a specific date, we'll simply enter those here, and I will show you the data we're importing in a second. So it goes also until July 30th, but 2015. We're basically running a 1-year test here. Now you can set the cash to anything you want. We're going to use 100,000. And finally we're going to add the security. In this case we're not adding SPY, which is the S&P ETF. Rather we're going to put it in as a variable, which is of course the symbol that we're using. So our symbol variable, and we also want to put in the leverage, so just follow along here. Great, so we initialize our algorithm here, There's a couple more things we want to initialize, which is the moving averages. So let's set what our simple moving average is equal to, which is the SMA of symbol, which is our traded asset, and we're using a 5-day moving average, and we want to look at a daily resolution, and you can reduce this to even a 1-minute tick. Good. And next we also want to initialize our 5-day moving average, so we do the same thing, SMA now, and we use the 1 here. Great, so we initialize our algorithm. We know we're going to be importing the data from a class called signal. We know we're going to be trading USO, and we know we're going to be using the moving averages. Now, what is our algorithm exactly? Basically, we take the data from every morning that I receive from I know first, in this case the commodities forecast, and you can see I highlighted CL1 here, and I'm looking at the 1-month horizon. And basically what I'm trying to do is check, for example here, if the signal is positive, which it is, and the price is currently above the 5-day moving average, then open a long or short position according to the 3-day direction, which is also positive, which is what we expect most of the time to happen. And if it's below, so for example, if the signal is positive and the price is below the 5-day moving average, then do nothing, which is basically our rules. So I converted this data here from all of the forecasts to a simple table. You can see here we have the date that the forecast came in, we have a 3-day and 1-month signal here and here. And this is the information we now want to import into QuantConnect. So, sorry, I had a phone. Let's start. So we first of all want to import the information from a class, which we use public void for a method that calls nothing in return. Basically, we're just having the data add in, and we are going to use a variable called trade signal, which is our instance, and set it equal to the data that we get out. Great, so from here you can delete everything else. We're going to change all of this later and just leave it right here. Now what we want to do is create a new file where we will put our new class. So let's call this data import, which is again a CS file. Great, so again it's part of the QuantConnect universe, and we're going to make a new class called signal as we set it up before, and this is really important. You want it to be a part of base data. We're going to make 2 decimals in this case, where we're going to assign our signals on a daily basis. So we have 1 decimal be the signal for 3 days, and we're going to set this initially equal to 0, and of course we also have our signal for 1 month, so let's call it 1A. Next we just have to do a little bit of syntax here to import the information. We use public override string, and we use get source. So here we use subscription data config. You only have to do this one time really, and from there you can basically just change the original file that you have in your Dropbox folder. You never have to deal with the importing again. We want to set it to a specific date, which is the date, and of course the data feed endpoint. Now if you're wondering why I'm writing things I'm writing right now. It's really not so important, at least not here. Later when we get to the rules, then it gets more important. And here we wanted to return a string, and this string is very important. This is basically the link that you generate from your Dropbox folder. And this is how you do it. You simply upload any CSV file, so you can save your Excel file. In this case, this Excel file is a CSV file. Upload it to your Dropbox, and when you click share, you're going to get right here this link. You want to copy this link and bring it into your QuantConnect code. Very importantly, you want to change the 0 here to a 1, which tells the algorithm to immediately download it into the IDE of QuantConnect. And next we want to basically assign this information to our variables. So we use the base data class reader, and again subscription data config, and we want to initiate a string called line, and again the date time state, and finally data feed endpoint. Okay. Great. So the first thing we want to do is create the signal class here. So we call it signal, and it's a new signal. Next, we're going to try and import the data. So what we are doing, we're first making a string of data. It's an array string here, and we use basically the string line, which we split via the commas. Okay, and end your line. Now we are going to make 3 variables. I'm gonna set up the variable time because this is very useful later if you want to basically improve on this algorithm. So for this one you won't need it, but for later it's important. So we use datetime first, and we're basically looking into the first column of our Excel file or CSV file, and we are taking that into our algo and assigning it to time. Next we want to assign signal 3 days, and this is really important. You have to convert what is now a string into a decimal, so we use convert to decimal, and again we use column 1, and finally we do the same thing. You can actually copy it if you're lazy, and we set it up for our 1 month variable and column 2. Great. So now we just wanna, if we have any exceptions or any problems, we want to basically return null, which means nothing. And this is important when you're going live, that you don't have your algorithm doing funky stuff and buying things when it shouldn't. You basically want to have the algorithm never initialize the main algorithm when there is no new input, or the input is somehow not returning correctly. And finally you want to just return our signal. Great, so we got the base data class all set up. We are missing just one thing. Oh. Let's just see that it's compiling and we get no errors. Still have errors here, the return. And what do we got here? No, it's just a little slow behind us. Okay, let's move on back to the main one. We can always come back here and fix up anything. I can already see here, subscription. Okay, great. So now we just got this one. This is fine. And let's continue here. Yeah, I cannot see here. Great, it compiled, so everything is fine. We have no bugs in our import class. We can go back to our main algorithm, where we still have many bugs, but we'll get all those fixed. So here we're now importing the data from signal, which we've set up here, and assigning it to trade signal, which is basically a copy. The next thing we want to do now is initiate on data, which is basically our tick-by-tick data, which we are using in the simulation. So let's go back here for a second and just add this information. This is sort of something we need to have for the QCA, for the QuantConnect algorithm to work. So add data, and we use here signal. Here you can name it whatever you want. Let's call it signal strength, and great. And our resolution, which is basically how often we want to receive data for it, is every minute. Very nice. So we have that set up. Now we can initialize our main trading class, let's say. So we use what's called the onData. Data. You want to load trade bars, and call them data. Great. So from here, the next thing we want to do is if, and we don't want the algorithm to run before our simple moving average is ready. So we use if not true, SMA and is ready. So if it's not ready, then return. So do nothing. This is our first condition for running anything. The next thing we want is we want to have the quantity of what we're currently holding, and from our basically we create a new variable called holding. So we want to check the quantity we're holding of the asset we are trading. So you want to go into your portfolio, you want to bring in symbol, which in this case will be USO. We're looking in our portfolio, and we're asking for the quantity of this specific asset. Next we're going to basically check, like I said before, if we have a new trade signal. This is basically the most important part, to make sure your algorithm only runs when we have some sort of data coming in. So trade signal, which is our instance of our signal class, and if it does not equal to null, then we can basically run our algorithm. Now we'll go through the syntax here one by one. So the first thing we want to do is check if the 1 month signal is the same as our moving average rule. So if we have a positive signal and a price above the 5-day moving average, we would go long depending on what the 3-day signal is, and the same thing for the inverse. So we use if, and the first thing we want to do is if the trade signal, and we're going basically into our class here, and we're asking for signal for the 1 month is bigger than, and here we are putting 0. So if it's bigger than 0, if it's a positive signal, and we use double AND because this is basically two Boolean statements that we're not setting it equal to something, we're basically only checking if it's returning true or false. And the next condition is SMA now is bigger than SMA, so the price right now is bigger than the average of the 5 days, then we can do something. In this case we don't do anything because there's another condition. There is the alternative, and we use 2 lines which indicates OR, and now we have our OR condition. And basically we're taking the exact same condition as before, but we are flipping it all around. So to make it easy, we just copy everything you see here, and of course it's smaller than 0 and smaller than the 5-day moving average. Great. The next thing we want to do is to check about the 3 days signal. So see if the signal is positive or negative, and then set our portfolio accordingly. So if trade, now we're going to ask it for the 3-day signal. So if our 3-day signal is bigger than 0, and our variables, which we set before, so it's our current holdings, is basically smaller than or equal to 0. So if we're currently not holding a long position, then we should be holding one under the rules that we set up. The way you go long, in this case we will use the set holdings feature, which is the most simple way of basically buying or selling anything. It will basically execute at market price. Later you will learn how to make limit orders, which is significantly going to improve your returns. I will stick with this method right now. So basically here we're checking if the 3-day signal is positive and we're not currently long, then go long. Similarly, we can then copy this statement because we want to do the exact same thing again, and we do the same thing here. So if the 3-day signal is less than 0 and holdings is bigger than or equal to 0, then we can set our holding to -1. So great, we're closing it here, closing here, we're closing here. We have to make one more closing brackets here. And let's see if our algorithm manages to process. So we got some problems. He's still digesting all the information. It's okay. So the next thing you can do is you can try to run your algorithm and see if it compiles. So we've still got some errors here. Sometimes he's just a little bit slow. So we have our if over here, which is, and we have our if over here. So here we're closing this one, we're closing this one, closing here, everything good. Here we're closing traders data, so we still haven't closed. Well, everything's fine. Actually, it should compile. Okay, not sure right now. Okay, seems to like it. He's only unhappy about the leverage. So let's just get rid of it and set the average to 2. Great, so our algorithm compiled, and now we are basically going to backtest it and see what we get. Hopefully it runs smoothly. So great, I can already see that it worked and that assets were purchased. Over here we can see basically our equity growing. You can see here our results. So we had a total of 18 trades. Our position flipped 18 times. Our compounding annual return is 84%, which is also our profit because we ran it for exactly 1 year. We had a pretty decent Sharpe ratio of 1.8. We can also see the actual position that we took right here, so we can see when we went long and when we went short. It looks pretty good. And finally we can also see the specific trades that were made and at what time they were made. Now because this is a ETF, it will trade on the first minute of the US market opening, so QuantConnect uses Eastern time. And everything looks great. So this is our algorithm, and from here you can really take your algorithm to a whole another level. You can, for example, import a lot more than just 2 signals. You can set up your actual inputs here as arrays, in which case you can actually import many different signals. So if you're a stocks subscriber, you can have your entire stocks forecast imported into QuantConnect and then trade according to any rules that you set over here. And this is it. I would highly recommend that if you're only starting to QuantConnect, then you can go through the university over here, which is offered. You have great videos. If you click on any video, you can clone the algorithm and follow along. And I hope you like this video, so please comment and subscribe. In the next video I'll be going into some really complex versions of this algorithm that you can then run using the I know first data and hopefully the entire universe of information. So good luck and see you next time.